This is another impactful episode of the PSDA podcast. I'm Craig King, your host, your favorite host, your only host, and we're here with your all-time favorite guest, Patrick Kelly. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm good, Craig. I am excited to continue to retain the title of favorite guest.
Yeah, I don't see you losing that title anytime soon. If you missed last week or a couple weeks ago, the 49ers did lose the Super Bowl. Yes, I'm still salty. Yes, I'm still losing sleep.
That's okay. It's okay. As a Bills fan, I can tell you at least you have a championship trophy you can look at.
Yes, that's true. But let's jump right to it, Patrick. Sorry about last week, but we're back here just to give you an update. But we really want to hone in on a topic that we've heard from many teachers, and that is teacher pay, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, this was the week that people have been waiting on. That's part of why we didn't record at the beginning of the week. We were getting ready for the release of the Ways and Means Committee budget, and Craig and Tony were coordinating two fantastic Hill Days for two great groups of teachers. So we've been at the State House pretty much nonstop, and now we are back, and the Ways and Means budget is out into the world, and we can see the first legislative crack at a salary schedule for 2024-25.
Yeah, so yesterday, if you are a member of PSDA, you received an email in the middle of the week, which is unlike what Patrick normally sends, but it was important that
it's like Maction during college football season. You got to get that Wednesday night game in there sometimes.
Exactly, yeah. So many of you saw the side-by-side that Patrick sent out of the salary schedule. So, Patrick, kind of give us some of the highlights on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpackage in the salary schedule because it's not the same song's fifth verse from the last couple of years. This is a different approach, and it is also significantly different than what the governor proposed in January, which had gotten a lot of teachers engaged, a lot of teachers concerned. It is not an exaggeration to say thousands of communications went to members of the General Assembly in the form of emails and letters and phone calls and text messages and good old sit-down face-to-face meetings. And so the Ways and Means budget, and this is the first legislative text that we have this year because the Ways and Means Committee has now adopted their version of the General Appropriations Act, and the salary schedule exists as a proviso within that annual state budget document. It differs in a couple of key ways from the prior existing salary schedule and the governor's proposal, most significantly when we're talking about starting pay, when we're talking about increases to cells on the salary schedule, and when we're talking about the number of steps on the salary schedule. Those are probably the three big areas of difference.
Yeah, that is huge news for teachers, and I don't think it's a stretch, Patrick, to look at what Ways and Means put out and to not find a direct correlation to teacher advocacy.
Yeah, no, I think it is without question that teacher voice had a role here. Members of the House indicated that they'd heard from teachers in their district, talked to teachers in their district, especially about the issue of the number of lanes in the salary schedule. As a reminder, the governor had proposed cutting lanes from 5 to 2, and the Ways and Means budget maintains all 5 lanes. That it is clear that teacher voice played a role in this.
Yeah, to provide some context, and Patrick mentioned we had a couple Hill Days this week. We had shout out to Representative Travis Moore, who drove down from Spartanburg even when the House was on furlough to meet with his teachers from Spartanburg 3, and he shared how he got involved with this, and it was because of a teacher. His child's former teacher sent him a message about concerns with the salary schedule, and he reached out to Patrick to get more information about it, and that is the power of advocacy. So teachers listening, friends of education listening, it is so important that you take accurate information and you convey to your elected officials how these decisions or potential decisions or ideas may affect you as a classroom teacher, how it may affect your family, how it may affect you in the classroom as a teacher. And so this is not a done deal. I do want to stress that. This is the first step in many steps, but it is an important one, and it shows the resilience and the assertiveness of our teachers. And so we appreciate all of you that remain respectful in your communications with elected officials, but very upfront about what was going on.
So you mentioned accurate information, and that's key. And as you mentioned, this thing is not done. It's not going to be done until May. This is a important first step, but it's not the only. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about information on this thing so people know what they're dealing with. And let's just start right from the start. It's the increase to minimum teacher pay. Currently this year, it's $42,500 statewide. The Ways and Means budget raises minimum statewide teacher salaries to $47,000. It's a $4,500 jump this year. That is more than the $1,500 increase proposed by Superintendent Weaver, more than the $2,500 increase proposed by Governor McMaster. Honestly, it's more than I can ever remember as a single year increase to starting minimum pay. That moves us ever closer to Governor McMaster's stated goal of $50,000 minimum pay by 2026. This is a game changer. Like I went back and looked at prior salary schedules just 10 years ago. Minimum teacher pay in South Carolina was $27,900. This is a $20,000 jump in 10 years. Which makes me shudder to think what my paycheck was back in the dark ages of 2004 as a first-year teacher. No wonder I was living on ramen. But, I mean, this is a big deal. Now, you can't overstate the fact that teachers were not being compensated what they deserved 10 years ago. There's no excuse for teachers in the year 2014 to have been getting a paycheck of $27,900 a year as a credentialed professional. But that doesn't mitigate the fact that a $4,500 jump in minimum starting pay in a single year is a significant investment.
So let's talk about the steps, because we were currently at 23.
That's right.
The last time we had any change, I don't know, it was at 22 for a while.
That's right.
And we bumped up to 23 maybe 8 or 9 years ago, something like that. And so where are we now with this proposal?
Yeah, I mean, this is another exciting thing. So Ways and Means heard from teachers, from the teacher task force, about the need to raise minimum pay. They also heard loud and clear from veteran teachers that salary was necessary to keep them in the profession. And the Ways and Means Committee responded in two ways. Number one, they kept all 5 lanes on the schedule. There is still a master's plus 30. There is still a doctorate. There's still a bachelor's plus 18. And that, of course, affects veteran teachers disproportionately since they tend to have those higher degrees. But the Ways and Means Committee heard teachers and heard, hey, this has been a PSTA policy priority for years, that steps should extend through bare minimum 28, because nobody can retire in less than 28 years under our state system. For too long, veteran teachers have hit year 23, and depending on what district they're in, they're not eligible for another raise the rest of their career. They've got to work another 5 years, 6 years, 7 years with no promise of an increase. This Ways and Means salary schedule extends annual steps to 28. Now, of course, there's some districts that already do that and some districts that go beyond 28. But there's a lot of districts that stop at step 23. This is a game changer to make sure that veteran teachers are eligible for an annual salary increase, at least to the point where they would be eligible for retirement under the old retirement system.
Thank you for that. So is it safe to assume that anticipated $750 million in recurring dollars played a part in that 4,500 suggestion?
Yeah, and the estimated recurring dollars actually went down.
Okay.
What they talked about on Tuesday is they're projecting about $660 million in new state revenue growth that is on a recurring basis, something they can plan on for next year, of course, barring a recession or something like that. And I think that's a huge thing to point out here. The Ways and Means Committee prioritized teacher salaries over literally every item in the state budget. And that's not hyperbole, because there were $660 million of available new revenue. The increase to the salary schedule that they're proposing is a $200 million price tag, with a $230 million increase to state aid to classrooms, so that districts also have some additional money to cover inflationary pressures and things like that beyond salary increases. You're talking one-third of all projected state revenue growth going to teacher salaries, not just to education in general, because there are education items in the budget beyond teacher salaries, tens of millions of dollars in new spending. So this is a huge investment in commitment. In regardless of whether somebody thinks this is a perfect salary schedule or not, it is hard to make the argument that more should have been put on the line for teacher salaries in the Ways and Means budget, because there are needs in this state beyond just schools, roads and bridges and law enforcement and public health. So it's a significant investment. Now, because of that limited amount of growth, there are some different things about this year's budget that I've already gotten some questions from teachers about. In particular, it's the fact that it's not a uniform increase to every cell on the salary schedule like we've had the last few years.
Right. Yeah, and that's good. That's good to notate that part. So, what can teachers expect now? You know, you and I, we're pretty familiar with the process, but for that teacher that thinks, okay, Ways and Means, they just suggested this increase in the statewide teachers in salaries for teachers. What is the next step going forward?
Well, the next step is to make sure that you are informed about what the salary schedule does. Please, if you're a PSTA member, look at that Legislative Alert Network email from February the 21st to look at what it means for you. And I cannot emphasize enough the importance of doing that, because I've already seen one misleading media report today in the mainstream media. The headline was, Ways and Means proposes $4,500 salary increase for teachers. That's not accurate.
Right.
It's just not. They proposed a $4,500 increase to starting minimum pay, but the proposed increase per cell on the schedule ranges from anywhere from as much as $5,500 for a teacher at Step 5 and a bachelor's degree. It's a $5,500 raise to as little as a $100 increase. Now, it's also important for people to hear that doesn't mean you're getting a $100 raise next year if you hit there, because you get your step plus the $100 that went to the additional cell. So, you know, the actual raise that you could expect next year is going to differ from teacher to teacher based on lane and step and based on your district. The other thing is, I'd encourage people to remember that what Ways and Means put out is a statewide minimum. Over 50 districts already pay above that. So if you look at the Ways and Means schedule, and I'm telling you, every cell on the statewide minimum went up under the Ways and Means by differing amounts, but everything went up. And if you look at it and you go, Patrick doesn't know what he's talking about, that's a pay cut for me. That is a pay cut because you're comparing your current paycheck to the statewide minimum, and your district is already paying beyond the statewide minimum.
Yeah.
So the first and most important thing is make sure to work from accurate information. And if you're confused and you're not quite sure, contact us. We've already had several members do so. We're happy to work that through with people. But you got to know what it potentially means for you and your district and your situation before you're ready for what comes next, because there's still steps to go in the legislative process, starting with the full House floor debate in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Patrick. So, before we wrap up and move on, anything else on teacher salaries that you want to share with our listeners?
No, I mean, this is I think a really exciting development. Is it perfect? No, but it's hard to find a perfect salary schedule in a finite budget. You know, I'm a 19-year teaching veteran in a master's plus 30 lane. Literally, my salary cell is one of the ones that does not get the significant raise compared to some of the other cells. But I also acknowledge that I was about to hit the ceiling on steps. I'm almost to 23, and this is going to extend me through 28. There's a cost to that. If the Ways and Means Committee had not extended steps to 28, they would have had more money available, and they could have put more into each individual cell on the schedule. But they heard from teachers that steps should be extended through 28, and so they did what they could with the available money to make that happen. So I would just encourage people to look at where the schedule is, to reach out to your member of the House and share your feedback. At bare minimum, thank them for prioritizing teacher pay in terms of the amount of money. Even if you wish that your individual cell had gotten a bigger raise, at least acknowledge the increase in total funding, and then advocate for what you believe would be a more effective use of that total increase of funding, because it didn't have to to play out this way with only $660 million. And I cannot believe I just said only $660 million out loud, but that's what you deal with government budgets. But it's a significant investment.
Yeah, it is. And I right as you were talking, I remember an episode we did last year, and we talked about what a significant investment in teacher salaries would signal to teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that conversation we had, and we teetered around the word of respect. It would signal that the General Assembly is taking a priority in teachers in their livelihood, and we are in the essence of that now. Again, going back to what you said, it's not a perfect teacher salary schedule. We're not saying that, but it is hard to find an argument that they aren't making this a priority in the budget. So,
look, the best anecdote on this is while this budget was being introduced, there were individuals that represent non-education groups that were indicating that they were thrilled that teachers were getting closer to what teachers deserve, but they also acknowledged that they wished that the groups or individuals they were representing were getting the same coverage in the budget. And I think it's true that the members of the Ways and Means Committee would have liked to have showered money on everybody in the budget, but you can only squeeze so much juice out of the orange, and teachers got a big chunk of the juice in this particular budget from Ways and Means. It's not to the finish line. The full House has to vote on it. The Senate will get their crack at this. But this is a significant first step that, as you pointed out, Craig, signals prioritizing teacher recruitment and retention.
Absolutely. So anything else you want to share before we jump off today?
Nope. That's it. I mean, the budget it literally sits on the desks of members of the House for the next 2 weeks. That is a rule. They have to physically print it and place it on the desk of members. So no, members of the General Assembly do not have a copy code count. So teachers, if you ever need to run extra copies, just find your way to the State House, apparently, because they don't have to worry about how many copies they got per month.
Good deal. Thanks, Patrick. And shout out to Spartanburg 3 and Chesterfield, who came this previous week for their Hill Day. And next Tuesday, we have 40 teachers coming from Fort Mill. And so we're excited to have them on Tuesday. And it's been another great.
Always great.
Yeah, it's always great. It's been another impactful episode of the PSA podcast. I'm Craig King, your host. I'll see you next time.